everybody. I'm Raluca from a 2 Owls independent bookshop in Timișoara, Romania. And here we are again at a new interview from our series Booksellers Revealed, a series we started last year during the pandemic because we were wondering how are the other booksellers doing across Romania and across Europe and all across the world. Because we have our communities that took care of us and that take care of us. But I think, and we think, me and Juana, that we need to do a little bit more to talk more about books, more about our business as booksellers. That's why today we have a new guest in this series, because as you know, I always quote Jorge Carrion during this kind of interviews because he's one of our favorite bookshop writers. And he said in one of his books that all bookshops are local and global. That's why we are today here with Philippe Hunziker from Libreria Sophos from Guatemala. Hello, Philippe.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Thank you for accepting our invitation. I wanted to, before asking you how your love affair with books started, I wanted to ask you, how is the book industry in Guatemala? Because maybe that's what we hope so. The viewers that are watching these interviews, the readers, the ones that love bookshops and that are curious about the life of books and of booksellers, don't know so many things about the book industry in Guatemala. Is it big? Do you have a lot of bookshops? How was it last year for you? Maybe just to have this kind of introduction for the beginning.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Well, Guatemala is a 15 or 16 million population size country, but it is very much concentrated. Most of the activity is very much concentrated in the capital city of Guatemala City, which has about 3.5 million people.
Mm-hmm.
So apart from Guatemala City, there are very few bookstores in Guatemala. In Guatemala City, we have some bookstores, but it's still a very poorly attended population in terms of how many people per bookstore.
Mm-hmm.
That was already true before the pandemic, and quite a few bookstores had to close. Either the bookstores closed altogether, or a few chains cut back on how many locales they have. And one of the things that is I think quite peculiar to Guatemala is, and to all other small countries in Latin America, is that publishing is very small, a very small activity in Guatemala. There are maybe between 1,000 and 2,000 ISBNs recorded in Guatemala every year, so that's quite small. So most of the books that are sold in Guatemala come from Mexico or from Spain or from Argentina or Colombia or the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So the main consequence of that is that most of our inventory is imported, and with imported inventory you have no returns. So that is quite interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That is quite interesting to have a bookstore where you can not return books. You have to develop some other
skills.
Strategies. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there are very few players in Guatemala. We all know each other. I mean, there's probably 5 or 6 bookstores in Guatemala City, in the sense that maybe one of them has 5 stores and the other one has 3 stores. We have only one, but there's not much more than 6 or 7 players in Guatemala City.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So looking on the internet, preparing for the interview we're having today, because I can understand, speaking Romanian, I could understand some of the interviews I saw with you or I read with you. I know some things about Libreria Sophos, but I would like for you to tell to our viewers when did it open, what kind of bookshop it is, how big it
Yes.
is, and these kind of things. And
So
maybe during this time, you can also tell us when did your love affair with books started, and how did you become a bookseller?
yes, yes, of course. Well, my mother was going to be 50 or 51, which is the age I have right now, 50. And she had never worked in books or publishing or anything of the sort. And she was beginning to be tired and fed up with the different things that she was doing. So she decided to quit. And when she was thinking about what to do, she thought about opening a bookstore. The idea at first, candidly putting it, is that she would open the bookstore and work in the mornings and read in the afternoons. Yeah, that was her idea. That's a crazy idea we all get when we get into this business. So she opened in 1998 a small bookstore, about 180 square meters, with a small terrace in it. So from the get-go, it was a bookstore and coffee shop at the same time, with the coffee shop serving the bookstore rather than the other way around. It was, as I say, a small bookstore, looking for an identity, in the sense that since my mother had never worked at a bookstore or in publishing before, the question of what I have the catalogs now, what do I order, is a very difficult question that, I mean, you get it wrong, most probably. So she had the first two orders put in, and all the books came in, and she thought it was a monstrous amount of books that came in to the bookstore. She opened the boxes. Whenever a bookstore opens a box, it's like Christmas, you know. And she started putting the books in the shelves, and of course there were not enough books, because you don't know how many books a shelf takes, and so it was all the wrong books, probably, because she ordered all the books that she wanted to read, and well, some of them are okay for selling, but you still miss a lot of important things when you order what you want to read, or when you don't know what your customer is going to be. And it was very difficult, because every time you sold a book, there was a hole in the shelf, and you couldn't order books and have them next week. You would have to wait for a month or so to get more books. So it was very, very interesting first couple of months, or first couple of years, actually. For the first 10 years we were at that locale. The locale right beside it was freed up, so we took it. So that bookstore went all the way to 250 square meters in that 10-year period. So not much changed. And then we moved to a rather larger space, and that's where we are right now. I got involved in the bookstore in the year 2000, so about a couple of years after my mother opened the bookstore. I tell the story one way, she tells it another. I remember that she got my brother and sister and me to talk to her, and she said, "Look, this is a lot of work. I think I'm going to close the bookstore because it's too much for me." And I was in between jobs at the time, so I said, "What if I come and help?" So I went in and went to help. She tells it another way. She said that she saw that I was out of a job, and that she wanted to extend a hand, and I took it, and I think both are right. But the important thing is that it took me about 2 days working in the bookstore when I decided this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I'm not, I mean, I study biology, so bookselling is not a first choice. But I really got in love with I was already in love with the bookstore because I used to visit it, and it was my mother's bookstore. But working in it really felt right for me.
Well, that's great. That's a great story. Even the both ways you told us the stories, I think is great. And because you said a few things that I'm going to pinch on them, I'm going to ask you, what do you think of this romantic image of the bookseller? The fact that people are coming in there, say, "Oh, I so envy you because you work in the bookshop and you're every day surrounded by books. You meet a lot of great people. You are spending your time with authors and books." Do you think that as booksellers and bookshop owners, we should crush that dream or just let it be and keep it alive?
Have you seen a duck in a pond?
I don't think so.
You see the duck. He's very proud when he's swimming in the pond, and he goes like this, and he's looking at everything like he has it, like everything is under control. But then you take the camera and you go down the water, and he's going like this.
Exactly.
So that's kind of the thing. We work very hard as booksellers to project an image of peace and quiet, of relaxation. And I mean, that's her business, right? To have people come in the bookstore and feel like they're in a spa. And that all their dreams are going to come true because they're going to find the book that's going to accompany them in the next weekend or week or month or year. But to make that possible, you have to work quite hard in the back office to have at it. So I think it's important when you hire a bookseller that the bookseller knows that he is not going to be working at a bookstore so that he can read more or she can read more, but it's going to be hard work, and probably she's going to be reading a lot more, but mostly backflaps, right? Not much more inside the books. That is still what one does when one has free time. But what is true is that as booksellers, we get to be in contact with all those objects of our desire, right? And that does not go away. That does not go away. I mean, I don't think you ever get to a point where you walk through your bookstore or another bookstore and are not captivated by that one title that you didn't see when you or you hadn't noticed, and it just flashes and you say, oh, that's a book I want to read. And because you're a bookseller, you can do that 10, 20 times a day. And then when you go home, you find yourself that you have 8 books in your hand that you're going to read from that day to the next day. And you get to your house and you have about 3 or 4 piles of 8 books each that you're going to read until you give up and say to the older 8 books, well, you're going back to the bookstore now. And they go back to the bookstore. But it's, I mean, even if you don't get to read all that you want, you still get that feeling that you are right where you should be, right? So no, I don't think we should crush that dream, because that's how a lot of us get into the business, and we need a lot more of us to mistakenly go into this business with that idea, so that then we can fall in love with the activity too. And I think it's very important that customers think that it's really that kind of dream that they're thinking of. It's another kind of dream, but it's important that they keep telling themselves, oh, that would be wonderful.
Yeah,
because it is wonderful. It's just wonderful in another way.
Exactly, not in the way they think, they
Yes.
think, but it really is. So getting back a little bit to customers, to book selling, to the business of books, I'm going to say that Jorge Carrion, I'm going back to him again, said in his book Bookshops, which is like a Bible for us every time before we have an interview or when we have a moment that we're not trying too much and something is not working, we go back to bookshops and we try to read and try to find an idea or something to give us some strength. He says over there that a bookshop, I'm quoting right now, that's why I'm reading, a bookshop can regenerate the social and the economic fabric of an area because it represents the present and because they represent the change. So what do you think is the role of the bookshop in the local community?
For a particular kind of community, or communities, I should say, more plural than singular. The bookshop is the hub of the community, or one of the hubs of the community.
Yeah.
I think the bookstore is this place that this meeting place. It's like a container for all ideas and all possible things that people in the community are thinking about or feeling. So it's a great repository in the sense that it harbors books for everyone. It's a great repository of dreams and interests and things that people have in common. So if you manage to have a bookstore that is also a place where people can talk to each other instead of just talking to the bookseller, I think in that sense you start having an institution that is helping the area, the local area that the bookstore is in, to coalesce and to start talking to each other. It's not the only kind of business that does this. I mean, bars certainly do, and some restaurants, and maybe churches, or the bowling alley, or where people go dance, but the bookstore is conversation. I think I got out right there, but it's more focused on conversations. So I think that's where the really important stuff can happen if you allow people to stay in the bookstore for long enough so that they start talking to each other. And that you can do that through events, or you can do that just by letting people be in the bookstore.
Exactly. So how do you see Sophos, for example? So to get back to Libreria Sophos, how do you see it in the community? How do you see the bookshop regarding the pandemic? For example, I was thinking last year about this question: how do I see our bookshop? Because I opened the bookshop together with my best friend. We are best friends for more than 20 years. And I was thinking last year during the pandemic at the community that we gathered around us. And I was thinking, what is exactly the bookshop for me? Not for my community, the community we created, but for me. And I see it, for example, as a safety place, a place where everybody that can come in, they should feel good. They should have this kind of conversations. They should relax. They should find in the bookshop a place where they can be themselves and take a deep breath and carry on with the hard things that they are going through. So this is how I see, for example, our bookshop. How do you see Sophos in your community, and especially for yourself as a bookseller, as a bookshop owner? How do you see it? How would you like it to be? How do you see it? How it is? How would you like it to be?
I think that the mention of being a safe place is very, very important. It's important for me. It's important for my fellow booksellers. it's a place we can call home.
Mm-hmm.
And I know of a very large number of readers and customers of ours. They do call Sophos a second home. You know that concept by Ray Oldenburg, The Third Place. He has a book called The Great Good Place, which is the first one who addresses that issue of a place being something more than somewhere where you buy and sell stuff, or where something more than just the apparent is happening. So yes, I think that the bookstore is a place, a safe place where you can build an identity, where you can go from being a teenager or a young adult who has an idea of what she or he wants to be, and start building that in the bookstore too. Again, it's not something that is particular to a bookstore, but a bookstore is a place where this, for a particular kind of person, can happen. Place where you can build relationships with living people or dead people. And yes, no matter who you are, I think you can find fellows in a bookstore, either by bumping into them in an aisle, or finding them lying there in a table or a shelf.
Exactly. So what would you say to someone who thinks of opening a bookshop, or to just apply for a job in a bookshop?
If you want to apply for a job in a bookstore, I would say have some comfortable shoes, because you're going to be standing quite a lot, and the first week or two your feet really hurt until they get used to being up and running all day. And this is jokes aside, maybe more important. Ask yourself whether you want to be around people, not just books, because books are great, but people can be too, unless you find them annoying. And you really should be, maybe not a people person in the sense that you should be outgoing and outspoken and extroverted, but you should feel comfortable around people and around meeting people and talking to people, without necessarily having the need to say intelligent, smart, and funny things, but just being comfortable around people. That is something that if you're into that, you can enjoy very much, and if you're not into that, it can work a toll on you. And if you're thinking about opening a bookstore, I would say that be expecting to work long hours, very intense and interesting and great, but long hours. Probably if you're in the business for long enough, you will start to find that you're, independently of who your best friends are, before you get into the bookstore, in about 10 years, at least a very significant fraction of your best friends are going to be customers, or authors, or publishers, or fellow booksellers. And those are great relationships.
Yeah. And also, as a bookseller and a bookshop owner, do you think that in the center of our business are the customers or the books?
Okay. when you think about the center of a business, we usually think of a circle, right? A circle has one center. But if you think of an ellipse, you need two centers for an ellipse to work. You need two centers, and then the ellipse is what you get when the combined distance between one center and the perimeter, and plus the distance with the other center are equal. So then you get an ellipse like this, and I think that is more appropriate. Yes, the books are at the center of the bookstore, and yes, the people are at the center of the bookstore. I think it's risky to say that there's not one thing without the other. I mean, I think that the books by themselves are a worthy object to consider protecting and nurturing, and I think some libraries are there for that, for an archivistic kind of endeavor, like to keep things from crumbling and disappearing. And the bookstore has a role in discovering new authors and in keeping old authors alive. But the people are definitely what makes the life of a bookstore. People inside the book, I mean, people that work in the bookstore and people that come to the bookstore.
Coming inside.
Yes, yes. So is that okay to say that?
Yeah.
Both centers are.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to ask you regarding what happened last year during the pandemic. If it was what happened actually to you, to your bookshop during lockdown, that gave you hope in this business and also in people, and made you realize what a great community you built around your bookshop. If there was something that gave you this kind of feeling of hope and strength to carry on to the craziness that we all faced last year.
Yes, we were closed to the public for about 4.5 months. So for 4.5 months, there were no customers coming into the bookstore. Some of us were working at the bookstore. Some of us were working from home. And I think we all experienced this at one point or another during the pandemic, that you were doing stuff, but you were not really sure what you were doing, or whether I mean, you were keeping busy, or not. Maybe you were thinking, or you were doing stuff, or just pushing paper from one side to the other. But there was quite a few times where one could definitely say that if you stopped and think about what you were doing, you were pretty lost. And I'm very grateful for the team that we have built at the bookstore. There's about a little bit more than 40 people working at the bookstore and the cafe. So it's quite a lot of people, but it's just such a fantastic team. Most of us were lost in that way some of the time, but there were always some people that were not lost, and they were doing exactly what they needed to do to keep the business running. And I'm very grateful for that team, because it was not one or two or 10 people, but everybody played their part when they could. We had to reinvent all of our jobs. I mean, what do you do when you were a bookseller, hand selling books, and you did not have people in front of you to put the books on? What happens when you did not, prior to that, have like a call center in the bookstore, and I don't know if you had 50 or 100 clients coming in one day when your bookstore is open. All those 50 or 100 people are going to be calling the bookstore, or writing through WhatsApp or Facebook or whatever,
or Instagram.
Or Instagram. And what do you do with that? I mean, everybody started like doing crazy work, and so we made a lot of mistakes, and our customers were really very patient with us. But we finally managed to reinvent our jobs, and for some time be call center agents instead of being booksellers. But we never stopped being booksellers, in the sense that we were not hand selling books, but we were still addressing the needs of our customers and their interests, and trying to work with them to get the right books to them. And then the other thing that is really fantastic and mind-blowing is the level of loyalty and of enthusiasm and that we got from our customers and close friends at the bookstore. I mean, they were there. They were worried about the bookstore. They were willing to help. They were enthusiastically responding to our promotions and whatever we told them. So I think that we managed to continue the relationship that we had built for about 20 years. And I mean, you felt that what you had been doing for 20 years really made sense when you saw that people cared and were expecting you to survive and expecting you to still keep the conversations that you had started before going, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty wonderful. And to have problem when we first opened after the first restrictions were lifted, but we still had some restrictions on how many people could go in. We still do, but we were very we were a lot more strict in the bookstore than was legal, because we really felt that the bookstore needed to keep being a safe space for our booksellers first, and then for our customers. So we had all this crazy system where you had to make appointments, and then people showed up without an appointment, and what do you do with that? And but I mean, the thing is that you really did a lot of different things during this pandemic, and you still were, I mean, your job description changed a lot, but in essence, you were still a bookseller.
Exactly, and that was great, and that's the great thing that also that our communities reminded us that we are still relevant, and they love us, and they need us, and they were more scared for our businesses than we realized we should be. And that I think also that's amazing when you do this. It's amazing. So ending this interview with lots of stories and ideas that I need to think about after we finish. I wanted to ask you what kind of reader you are, and if you want to recommend or not recommend, just tell us about a book you've read recently, maybe, that you think we should read. Something that...
Okay. I am mostly an essay reader, a nonfiction reader, more than a fiction reader, and I mostly read about Guatemala and its history, its politics, and all sorts of different things around Guatemala. That has to do with the fact that since about 10 years ago, I am an editor also. We publish some books at the bookstore, and it has been a very interesting activity too. And I mean, it's both that I publish books on Guatemala that has me reading things on Guatemala, but also the fact that I like to read things on Guatemala that has me publishing stuff about
exactly.
Guatemala.
It's a vicious circle, this one.
Yes,
You don't
it
have
is.
an end, a beginning and an end. It's just going like this.
Yes. So on that, I could recommend. I'm trying to think of books that are that may be available in other than Spanish. Miguel Ángel Asturias comes to mind definitely, because he's our Nobel Prize laureate, and he has written some very beautiful and great books like The President or Men of Maize and others. They're available in French and some are available in English also. Augusto Monterroso, which is the greatest short story writer.
We have them translated in Romanian.
Well, you see, he's fantastic. I love Augusto Monterroso because he's so witty, he's so smart.
Exactly.
And,
yeah.
I mean, he reminds me, of Slavomir Rosek or like this kind of very a short story that can be dark and funny.
Funny at the same, yeah.
Yes, and very smart. So I love Augusto Monterroso. And with the younger Guatemalan authors, I think one can. Well, Eduardo Halfon comes to mind, of course. He's a Guatemalan author. He has been published in French and English also. And Rodrigo Rey Rosa is also a well read outside of Guatemala, a Guatemalan author. So yeah, maybe those. And I realize that I'm a nonfiction reader that is recommending fiction.
Exactly.
But
I wanted to say that, but you said it too. I think that's great.
Well, fiction is a much better vehicle for bridging situations that are not easily relatable.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your recommendations, and hope to see you soon. Who knows, in Frankfurt, in London? Who knows when we can meet at EIBF?
Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great? Yes.
Maybe next year.
I'm looking forward to meeting you, and thank you so much for your interest and this work that you are doing from your bookstore. I think it's wonderful that you reach out and that we can get to have these conversations, because you as a bookseller, you can sometimes feel alone. Can I say alone? I think so. Yeah. But then you turn around and you see that there are a lot of booksellers that are doing exactly what you're doing or what you want to do, and that's very, very comforting.
Exactly.
So thank you.
So on these thoughts, thanks everybody for watching us, and have a great day, and take care of your booksellers.